Ask me what's good in life.
What's good in life?
What's good in life, Matt?
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
That was a very good. That was a very good accent.
You know, he's really he's shameless in intellectual argument. He's absolutely without character, or moral foundation, or even intellectual substance.
I decided that all three of us actually all represent the Freudian map of the mind. So I'm the superego. You, Rio, are the id, and Matt is the ego.
Okay. Let's unpack that a little bit.
It makes a lot of sense.
For the himbo of us, can you please explain what you're talking about?
I feel like Matt probably knows Freudian psychology better than I do. So you probably can explain it better.
So yeah, the Freudian map of the mind. So it's composed of the three parts. So the id is like your kind of compulsive desires, like just do it, baby, sort of thing. Whereas
pretty rational,
That's what you mean. That's not me.
Whereas the ego is sort of the more, I guess, what we think of when we think of the self, right? Like you kind of what you want out of life and that sort of shit. Whereas the super ego is the mediating force, so it tempers the excesses of the id.
How dare you, Ruben? How dare you temper my excess? I want big, muscly belly men raping titty ladies on my screen. And I won't take no for an answer.
But I still get some of the that energy. I absorb the energy, but I rationalize the energy. I'm sublimation, right? This is what happens when all a university really is it's taking excessive masculine energy and channeling it into some sort of rational order, and then it breaks down all over again. Yeah, but that's effectively like all a vice chancellor is just too much horny energy stuck in a bureaucracy. So that's why they have to build so many buildings for themselves and waste so much money. And then if you're also Peter Rafshin, do bad things in a sexual context, allegedly.
This is far too esoteric for this podcast, Ruben.
I'm sure some person knows who Peter Rafshin is. I don't know.
At least one or two people. I think that this short story is great, and I think that this movie is even better.
Okay, I will say that my dislike of the short story is a lot stronger than it is for the film, and I think this is probably an interesting topic to talk about, because I think we may have talked about. I can't remember if we talked about this on the actual episode last week, or if that didn't actually make it into the episode or not. But I don't think it did actually. We talked about like the differences between bad prose can actually translate into decent film. And I have more of an issue with bad prose and bad writing than I do with bad filmmaking, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think we did. We talked about that last.
Yeah. I don't know if it made it into the episode or not. Probably not. But we can rehash that, if you want.
I tend to think, I feel like the superego here because I'm mediating between two forces, because I kind of...
Maybe I am the ego, who knows?
Maybe. I feel like the story I didn't enjoy as much as the film. I love the film. I think the film is a classic. It is so good.
But do you have nostalgia for the film?
Well, not really, because I wasn't really conscious at the time when it came out. So why would I have nostalgia for it?
Oh, no, I was wondering if you'd seen it when you were younger.
Oh, yeah, I did see it when I was younger. But actually seeing it...
I'm pretty sure, though, like, everyone, like, in all honesty, has prenatal nostalgia for Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Isn't that just... that's how things work, right?
Yeah. And I love Arnold Schwarzenegger, too. Like,
how else did he become governor if that wasn't if we weren't all sort of beamed into him before birth? Like, I feel like that. This movie like really does only work with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the accent as well. Like, this is we were saying before, it's a very American film, but it's also just like it channels the stereotypical like Austrian German accent so well.
I mean, he barely talks in the movie, which is something that I felt was fun as a difference between. I mean, obviously the movie is not an adaptation of this short story. It is clearly an adaptation of some other Conan short stories. But he barely talks. I mean, it's probably because he can't talk.
At this point, I don't think he could speak much English.
No. And I found him to be devoid of many Schwarzeneggerisms.
Careful on the pronunciation there, Rio.
Hey, I'm the only one who doesn't have to be. Schwarzeneggers. Anyway, so much so that I didn't really see him as Arnold, like Arnie in this movie. He was very much a strapping, like well-muscled, like hulking brute who doesn't really like talk. And all the other characters had so much character and personality. I mean, most of the other characters had like so much that it didn't really matter.
Character is a stretch, by the way. Personality, maybe, not character.
Caricatures, is that better?
Well, yeah, I think that's probably a strength of the movie as opposed to the short story, because the short story, I feel like Conan talks too much, like, and the talking as well in the short story is very, and I understand that was written in the 30s, and it in some sense is the progenitor of the genre, so to speak, of like sword and sorcery sort of thing. So it is, people speak in this kind of faux, old-timey, ancient sort of way that just doesn't read well to me. But so it is a bit of a slog to get through, and just Conan talks too much.
It reads like, it reads like anyone who's ever done a creative writing class knows viscerally the at least I'd say like 3 or 4 students, always male students, who try to write like very, very, very fucking bad fantasy, and it's always like because more often than not, it's an excerpt of their like 1,000 fanfic fantasy novel, and because they can only submit like 4,000 words, it's like the first part of that novel, so it's like all fucking exegesis, all world building, and it's fucking awful. I mean, it would have been awful anyway, but it's like it's so much worse because they're like, okay, everyone needs to talk. I need to explain like why I use all these like pseudo magical terms and everything like that. That's a lot of my pent up rage from ever have. Like, never do a creative writing class if you can.
I mean, I just feel like I really love how it's approached with this, and it feels like Dune discourse is going on right now, because as we're recording this, the Dune movie was just released, and a lot of the complaints with that movie is people saying, "Oh, it's not a movie. It's not an example of world living. It's an example of world building." And like my critique of that is, I'm like, if this is your critique, I just watched a 2.5 hour prologue, and I'm like, if that's your critique of a movie like of epic fantasy, then you're watching this wrong. You're interpreting it in an incorrect way. That is a function of the genre. You can't fellowship. I mean, and say, "Oh, I just watched a 2.5 hour prologue," because yes, you did watch a 2.5 hour prologue. That is a function of the narrative. You are learning how to interpret the world and learning how to interpret how the story is going to be told, and you're only just seeing a part of it. And that is the way that the genre functions. You know, genre moving away from like the marketing genre as opposed to the Right. And I reading The Phoenix on the Sword, which we should probably actually say the name of this short story.
Oh, we did.
That's very.
We did. Don't
something. Sorry. That is something that I very much picked up, and that I loved about it is Rob Howard doesn't really seem to know what he's writing just yet, but there's this kind of what Ruben was talking about in this creative writing class. There's like young people who are really excited about this idea that they have, and it's not perfect yet.
It's never going to be perfect.
Wrong. It could be perfect once. There is that element to the short story that was really exciting to me. I think also because going like what you said, Matt, about Conan shouldn't talk that much. We have this idea of what Conan should be, about what sword and sorcery is, and yet there's this, the progenitor of the genre, which is not necessarily the best, obviously, has this. He's not a young warrior killing and maiming people. He's an old king who's kind of reflecting on his time. He's bored. He's sullen. He doesn't really want to be there, but he talks a lot. Half of the short story is by this tertiary character who sends a creature to not even kill Conan, to kill the main antagonist, I guess you might say. It's all setting up this like grand narrative that gets your mind wondering is a good word, actually, like WONDER, about what this world is, what could happen, and the prose being incredibly sparse. We'll
Sparse.
say
It's not sparse. It's overwritten crap. I mean, I didn't have my brain wasn't wandering; it was aneurysing.
He does related as said once, which was amazing. And I was like, when I read that, I was like, okay, this is good. This is objectively good. He's using ejaculated. Yeah.
I love when people use ejaculated like that.
It's so very like 1930s as well. It's like you poor innocent.
Yeah, I think with the writing itself, I mean, I do forgive it a little bit, even though I kind of did not like reading it. But I do forgive it a little bit because as its sort of status as like the progenitor for the genre. But just. And it kind of reminded me, have either of you ever read The Elements of Style by Strunk and White?
Yeah, so a long time ago, but yeah.
And so that is like the whole idea behind that is, and basically it's just personal preferences, essentially, if you read it. It's like, don't do this, do that, kind of like rules of thumb. And one of their big things is cut down on adverbs. And I feel like he needed to read this. This is like
just a little bit.
Everything, literally every sentence has an adverb in it.
Can I read? I'm just going to read the first paragraph here because I feel like just to give you a sense of like how much you get swamped in adverbiage, I guess. Okay. Over shadowy spires and gleaming towers lay the ghostly darkness and silence that runs before dawn. Into a dim alley, one of a veritable labyrinth of mysterious winding ways, 4 masked figures came hurriedly from a door which a dusky hand furtively opened. They spoke not, but went swiftly into the gloom, cloaks wrapped closely about them. As silently as the ghosts of murdered men, they disappeared in the darkness. Behind them, a sardonic countenance was framed in the partly open door. A pair of evil eyes glittered malevolently in the gloom. It's not just in every sentence. There's at least 2 or 3 adverbs in every single sentence.
Every clause, essentially. Yeah. It's camp.
It's insane. Yeah, like I feel like you have to. That's actually
it's camp. It's camp.
That's a good way of thinking. If you're going to think about, like, I think particularly with the movie as well, the movie gains value, I think, only by thinking of it as camp. I think, like, particularly as the movie maybe not as much the book, but I think camp as a genre itself works more when it comes to film than it does to written prose. I'm not sure why, but
yeah, because mostly camp is about visual style, I guess. And
yeah,
like it's hard to you can overemphasize in writing, but it's hard to like flourish in writing in a camp way. It just, when you read it, it's just the tone of it is it's not as apparent as it is in visual cultures.
Yeah.
I would not read it as camp though. Like I think the film,
the movie or the book?
The film.
Yeah.
I would not read the film as camp because I think the film, the film in some ways is very 80s, but it still looks amazing. Like the effects, effects are really good. The cinematography is amazing. And the costume design and everything, even the dodgy snake. I love the dodgy snake when he's like stabbing it, and it's like
I think those aspects are campy. I think particularly the cinematography is like quite good. I think it's the rest of it that makes it borderline campy. I think there are certain scenes which just feel like which just so like this is like pure male masculine fantasy.
When he punches the camel.
That's the best scene in the entire film.
Oh my god!
I just couldn't stop laughing after
so
reading
good.
But that entire scene as well, where he's like,
there are so many good things in this film.
I kind of like what else happens like just during that like one scene, like before he punches the camel. I took a few notes of this. Well, then you get there's the witch scene like before that as well. Well, the fact that it's like
that is such a weird nonsense scene.
Like I still don't get what was going on there. Like, it's never explained really at all in the film. But I think my favorite of like apart from over the camel scene, the best like campy scene, or just at least like masculine fantasy scene, is the fact that when he's stealing the gem, and there's like this snake protecting the gem that he's trying to steal. What wakes the snake up isn't like the noise or anything like that, but it's his sweat that's dripping off his body onto the snake, and then he like decapitates the snake in a great scene.
So it made me so happy.
Yeah, it had to be his own sweat. Like what else was it going to be?
Yeah, it's so good, and I like the film especially has it's directed by John Milius, who is a pretty crazy director, and he's probably one of the only kind of well-known openly right-wing directors. And so people always read a fash like sort of thematic into it. But
you don't say.
Yeah, but like the best thing in terms of that angle, my favorite part about it is how the entire society around the followers of Thulsa Doom, they're essentially just hippies. Like they're all barefoot and in their in their linens, and like just following Tulsa Doom around, and like it's all about the flesh and ecstasy, and like people rolling around in in tents having orgies and stuff like that. And I just love the venom for hippies just drips off this film, and I just love it so much.
But there's also I didn't necessarily read it like as much as like a venom for hippies. I guess it's there too, but also because I mean the characters like Conan and whatever the other guy's name is, who's also doing the art. Yeah, Subotai. They're also like, wow, this is paradise when they first like see it. And I just got this like scene of this like heaven with like men in their harems and everything like that. So I don't think it's not just like fuck these hippies. It's more jealousy at the fact that the hippies are all the ones having sex and not the fascists, right? If only we could get some of this action, then we could get rid of the hippies. We could subordinate the hippies to our plan.
That's an interesting reading. I never thought about it like that. But like fundamentally, the whole society that they depict, the followers and stuff, is depicted as this sort of venal, like decadent, disgusting,
Dionysic.
Yeah, and Oh well, if we're going to speak about his followers in the film, Valeria is great. I love her so much because
Valeria's amazing.
She's so hot, but also not in the kind of like sort of post 2010s way. Like she's not a Megan Fox, and but like she's a sort of wiry, she looks like a normal woman. She's a sort of wiry frame, and you can believe that she's like cutting throats and shit like that. Like she's not perfectly
she looks like
made
a
up.
warrior.
Yeah.
It's like a warrior.
And it's weird to me that these days you get, basically in every movie you have the woman warrior trope. Some of them, those movies are led by this kind of archetype, but she to me feels more grounded and real than this. Like it's like I believe that she could kill someone more than like a 40 kilogram Scarlett Johansson or something.
Well, there's a good scene in which that is like depicted as well. It's when they're rescuing what's his name from the temple, the king's daughter.
I'm not sure. I don't remember if she ever has a name. If she's
some of the names, I don't remember any names from Conan, really.
The princess.
Anyway, so they rescue the princess, and it's just before she dies as well. And the Arnold Schwarzenegger character,
she doesn't die. Oh, before
she doesn't
Valeria
die.
dies.
No, the princess. Sorry,
okay.
Yeah. They're like Arnold Schwarzenegger's like running out with her like on her shot, like with them on the shoulder, the princess on the shoulder, and Valeria is just sort of she's like the one running behind, and she's the one who like has to like fend off all the soldiers, like not the male character. And it's like there's just like subtle ways of doing it to establish a character, and I don't think they're necessarily like for such like a masculine film as well. They do that in a way that I don't think they really necessarily thought about it that much. Maybe they did.
Yeah.
And then they have her killed off like right after that scene as well by getting the phallic imagery. It's just great, like getting shot by a snake.
by the tumescent snake,
an erect snake.
I always thought that. Was when I watched that as a kid. That was the scariest scene to me. Like the fact that someone could fire snakes at you with a bow and an arrow. Like I was like,
I was not incorrect to bring Freud up on this topic. This is your nightmares sound appropriately decadent, Matt.
Well, given where I've ended up in my life, I think I've integrated my nightmares fairly well. Given I pursue erect snakes pretty often, so.
But shot by James Earl Jones, like that's the big difference, though.
He's so good. He's having so much fun.
Oh my God. And the hair. He's like great.
The hair.
If I like want like a proper
wig,
like
campy, his hair is not that straight.
I know. If I want a proper campy villain, I think it has to be like James Earl Jones, who basically does like no fighting at all in the entire film.
No,
but
that's
sort of like
he's very Lucifer. He's very Lucifer.
He's like a Svengali, like that, and you see that at the start of the film where he essentially mesmerizes Conan's mum. He's like defending him and makes her drop her sword, and then cuts her head off. Like, and just the them filming his eyes, which he's got blue contacts in. Which is really weird.
I know. Like the scene when he transforms into the snake.
It's like the best. So good. I love it.
So good. It's just so subtle. I mean, that actually like kind of holds up like decently well, but also like it doesn't. And I love the charm of like 80s special effects, where it's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna like have his face like elongate out like this, and his eyes transform into snake eyes. It's great. I feel like only he could play this character as well. Like, it's just something about like his voice is just like. Oh, it's so perfect.
What are you going to say, Rio?
Yeah. I think I was going to agree. I mean, camp is such a funny word. It's hard to ever really like say something is completely camp or completely not. But I mean, there's definitely an element of self-awareness of this of everyone who is making this film about what they're making. Like, I'm just thinking of the scene with the scene where they rescue the princess from the temple, and the lackey with the big hammer, and he smashes the central pillar of the thing, and then the heroes escape, and there's just like 2 scenes of the guy being like, "Oh fuck, oop, I fucked up." And it's just such a silly scene that would have been ruined with like a DreamWorks like kind of grin smirk, like one liner.
Oh fuck yeah! Oh fuck.
That if this movie were made today, when Valeria like defends them at the back, she would have been like, "Bet you didn't think a girl could do that," It would have just been so bad. It would have been like, ugh.
Fuck! I hadn't thought of that at all, and now like I can like. There's so many moments in this film where you would just I can imagine like a Marvel version of this, and it's just there can't be like a moment of like silence or anything like that. There's got to be some sort of quip or.
It's so funny. As we were going into recording, I was like, I don't want to say the word Marvel because I think if any, I mean, I haven't seen the 2011 Conan film, so I don't know if that holds up. But
yeah, I don't want to.
But there were definitely some more parallels. Anyway, if any movie company made this movie today, it would be full of like, we need to make Valeria feminist, and I'm like, no, she is. She's a great character.
She is a feminist icon. Perfectly. She just doesn't have to say it. Yeah,
she doesn't have to like, but I also like, yeah. The scene where Conan uses his sexiness, his sex appeal to woo like a priest.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I love that scene.
He's like, yeah, I am actually really hot. I'm just gonna find a gay. So
steal his clothes. Yeah.
I'm not really comfortable in my in these clothes. Do you mind helping me with my flowers?
Can we please go over there where it's just us?
The best thing is when he when he go into that like camp and the other guy asks him, so, what are you doing with the flowers? Well, I need to find a girl. It's like I just like realized that it's like, oh yeah, actually no, the flowers were for a girl, you know. And that.
I think it's called. I always consult Ruben because it's been so long since I studied literary theory. It's called bathos, isn't it? When you deflate the emotional impact with like humor,
comedy.
Yeah,
that's bathos. Yeah.
So and that Marvel films and most films these days are full of that. And what
it's not even good. It's not even good bathos, right? Like good bathos is like Gogol, right? Or somewhere like an extreme like sad situation is like completely. They take it to like the extreme length. I feel like that bathos is more like when you take emotional scenes that should have like emotionally charged things and like just completely like abjecting them almost.
But that's what they do in. But you can't have a moment of kind of genuine emotion. Well, very rare anyway. They have to be undermined by a quip or something, and that's a very common thing in those movies. But what I think is interesting is that, Ruben, you're reading this film as camp in a way, but I think it's more like we're reading it in relative to like kind of modern sort of blockbusters in a kind of fantastical genre, and watching this in comparison to things like Marvel films and stuff, it's just so great to me because it doesn't do that. It takes it doesn't matter how ridiculous the scenario is, it takes it seriously and like commits to it. Whereas I feel like Marvel, because it's like it's essentially a ridiculous concept or ridiculous concepts, people in spandex flying around fighting monsters and stuff. It cannot commit to that because there's some weird thing about them wanting to sort of wink at the audience to say, oh yeah, we know you're all 40-year-olds watching this crap. But here's how we make it okay by making a joke of this. So it's like this to me, I don't view this as camp at all. And I think just in comparison to the crap we have today, it just seems that way because it doesn't undermine itself. It commits to it.
Yeah, I think to clarify, I don't think it's like intentionally camp or anything like that. I think it's more
good camp never is.
Yeah, well, that's the point, right? So I think it's a seriously intentioned film that, and I feel like all good camp arises from films that are too serious, almost.
Yeah, but I'm more making a comment on the Marvel film because I feel like people making those films are worried about seeming like these old films, like seeming to
there's definitely to coin a phrase, there's an anxiety of influence going on there, right? Where they are worried about like the sort of campy Superman spandex things, and they do try in like very self-conscious ways to not repeat that. And I don't know. I guess they're successful, like monetarily, but they're also like the worst things to have probably happened in the last like 11 years culturally.
Yeah,
and that's saying a lot. There's been a lot. There's been a lot bad happening, but there's I think that it's a logical extension where nothing can be taken too seriously anymore. And to say that, like, you know, Dave Foster Wallace's critique of like consumerism as like co-opting irony, I think this is like the entertainment version of that. Whereas like films have completely co-opted irony for a consumerist basis. It's like, well, and comic books to a certain extent, I feel like can almost get away with it because comics themselves are highly self-referential forms, highly ironic forms in that way. But because these films, they're not comic book films, really. They're action films. They've transcended anything that could be considered just straight comic books. It doesn't quite work in a way because the comic books were themselves sort of like it's still trying. They weren't trying to be serious, whereas I think these films are trying to be serious, but also trying not to be too serious because to be too serious would be to undermine something that's fundamental to the genre. And they're sort of like they're in that sort of constant like battle between like two opposing senses of style, and they don't really know how to deal with it, I guess. Or maybe they do know how to deal with it because they make a lot of money from them, but I guess they don't know how to deal with it artistically for anything beyond, you know, the dollar sign. And as a faithful libertarian, you know, praise be to the market, ladies and gentlemen. We all suffer under its beautiful, beautiful rainbow shadow.
You are not a guard.
Neither are you.
The thieves, like yourself, come to climb the tower.
You don't even have a rope. Two fools who laugh at death. Do you know what horrors lie beyond that wall?
No.
Then you go first.
Now, Ruben, I'm guessing by your reaction to the short story by Mr. Howard, you're glad that he killed himself at 30?
No, actually, you should have done it at 20. No, so you're right. That's cruel. That's cruel. You know, if abortion was legal, then that would have been a better option.
Abortion is murder. Abortion is murder. We've said it on the podcast.
Well, if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that abortion is murder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Pulling ends and eat your heart out.
Channeling the trad, you know, fascist Catholic vision of this film, you know, abortion is murder. So imagine how different this film would have been if Conan was aborted instead. I mean, there would be no film.
Yeah,
exactly.
And he wouldn't have been able to disband all those filthy hippies.
Exactly right. I mean, the big question here is actually. I mean, I'm glad you raised this topic, Matt. I'm glad we're onto abortion and safe sex. Were the hippies practicing safe sex? I don't think they were. Where were all the babies in this film? That's what I want to know, because I don't think they were using protection in any of these orgy scenes or all, you know.
Well, I just feel that this film was prophetic because there are no children, so it's essentially just like millennial, childless 40-year-old PMC.
Yeah,
this is an antinatalist masterpiece, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No one in this film is bisexual, though. I will have it. And everyone is straight.
Apart from Conan, he's channeling
the one evil priest.
Yeah, the one. It's always the evil priest, though. I mean, they knew that right from the start.
Oh, that's right. Before we went for our little break, I mentioned very briefly the parallels to Jason Momoa and the scene at the beginning where they give him a woman and she looks absolutely petrified to be there. And he's like,
that scene.
He says nothing to her, and they're all looking in this cage, and he just like puts a rug around her, and then just like, okay, get on the ground. I'm going to like fuck you now. I was like, oh, okay.
The best bit of that entire scene was like, I don't even know like why the subtlety of the detail, like why it needed to be that he wraps her in this like, you know, I don't know, shawl or whatever it is, blanket, and then just rapes her anyway. And then it's just such a it's like because like ultimately
wanted her to be comfortable.
No, but it exemplifies, you know, the classic trad fascist motive. You know, we don't rape women. We make them like comfortable, so that therefore, you know, we're protecting them, not actually doing anything bad against them. You know, it's fine.
Just so they don't think it's rape. You know, like
exactly.
Exactly.
Just so the people that, you know, are gawking through the window don't think it's rape. That's the important thing, right? It's all about distinctions. And
I just wanted to go back. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'll just. There's definitely a cinematic parallel there, though, with the first season of Game of Thrones with Jason Momoa.
So that's where you're going with this. Sorry.
No, that's okay. A very similar scene where he receives his new wife and she is petrified of him, and he comforts her and then rapes her anyway.
Yeah, like fucks her doggy style or something.
He fucks her dog, and she is crying and beside herself the entire time. Which is, I mean, as noted, a marked difference from the scene in the book where she is scared, but he comforts her, and then she enjoys having sex and then becomes dominant. Whereas in the show. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that Momoa was the contemporary Conan, and then that's all.
Yeah, I mean, as Freud would say, there are no sexual accidents. You know.
I think I share Ruben's, let's say, misgivings about
contempt
about the style. But Ruben, could this have been written in a way where you would have liked it? Or is it thematically just not your thing?
Probably not.
Like, what if John Crowley wrote it?
If John Crowley wrote it, I mean, they're fine. I'd read anything he wrote. I don't know. I think there's more issues with the story than there are just with the style. I think maybe it's just not particularly interesting. I don't know. It just doesn't doesn't chime with me. You know, 'cause I'm all about that. Synergy and good energy, I guess.
I mean, one of the things that annoys me about it is that the story's actually, it doesn't seem like Conan is a main character. It's almost like the characters are the schemers who are trying to kill him. It almost seems like they get more screen time and development than he does.
That's curious to me. Why does that frustrate you? Because I thought that was one of the most intriguing parts of it, and that was one of the things that made me excited too.
Well, I mean, I think maybe I'm reading back because the story, it's the first of the Conan stories, so he hasn't established the mythos yet. So obviously, and I think it goes back to what you were saying at the start, Rio, that he didn't know what he was doing. He was sort of writing his way there, and the Conan stories just kind of grew out of that. In fact, this story was originally, it's almost exactly the same as the story he wrote for his other character, Cole. They made a movie of Cole the Conqueror too, based on this. And he's basically just rewritten it and changed the names, find or replace. which would have been harder back in the days with typewriters. Find and replace. But maybe it's me looking back retrospectively that I did want it to be more about Conan and his brutishness rather than these schemers who will get killed in the end anyway.
Mm-hmm. I just kind of think like it, not totally interested in being what, as I had a few expectations about what this might be. I thought it would be a very basic story about a barbarian who kills some dudes, and it wasn't that. I found the way that it complicated not just what I expected Conan to be, but also what I expected the story to be. I found that really pleasing. I also loved the what are they called? The little bits at the tops of the chapters. What are they called again?
Epigraphs?
Yeah, epigraphs.
Epigraphs, yeah. That
Although for this kind of dead story, they're more like epitaphs. Am I right?
Hey. Fucking hell, Jesus.
Sorry.
We got some literary humor for you, boys and girls. That I felt like they very much clued me into the tone into which that this should be read, is that this should be spoken aloud to a group of people, like it is a myth that is being retold. The epigraphs is a book that Conan has written in the future of this short story. He is reflecting on his life as an old man, whereas in the story he is, in his 40s or 50s. In these epigraphs, he's recounting the epic of his life. Maybe 70 or 80. And it's in this like verse. It's in verse. It's very basic verse, but it's in verse. And I found when you were actually reading it out, then Ruben, I'm like, oh, this flows much better when spoken. I can imagine that, a group of people sitting down.
That's just my magical voice. I mean, it's nothing to do with the pro.
You're gorgeous. You're gorgeous.
That honeyed tongue.
So I guess
that I am. Just like James L. Jones, really. My voice. Everyone listening to this podcast is being cast under a snake-like phallic spell. Really.
We've all got voices for radio. Speaking
of, I guess that kind of seductive quality of the prose. Why? Like, I don't really know. So that's why I was like pondering this question. Why were these things popular? To call them things, I don't really call them stories. Like, what? I don't really sort of like understand like why this sort of stuff gets popularity.
Well, I think in the 30s, in particular, when this sort of arrived, like a lot of the pulps it was all about adventure stories. So you had, and that comes out of the tradition of what's his name, H. Rider Haggard, is it?
Yeah, Haggard.
And stories of adventure in lost civilizations or vanished lands or whatever. And I think this is just a extension of that. There's also like the Edgar Rice Burroughs and stuff where they adventures on another planet, kind of like adventure stories, which have always been popular, but in the pulps, it became, they extended to other settings, I guess. They extended to ones that don't exist, rather than like ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia or whatever, or some lost kingdom in Africa or whatever. So I think it's sort of like a development of that. And because there was a proliferation of that sort of cheap literature and magazines that basically everyone could read, I guess it just became, there was more of a demand for it, and it just became popular.
It's also in the same vein as kind of Superman. It's very much, I hate to bring this up again. It's the pop culture of its time. It is the lowest common denominator. Everyone can read this. Everyone, and it can be read aloud to you, and people will get it. And I think that's cute. I think that's beautiful.
Awful.
Oh yeah, and it's all swashbuckling. Like it's just that's all it is. Like it like all of these little subgenres is just they're all just versions of swashbuckling. Like Count of Monte Cristo and Scarlet Pimpernel and stuff. Like it's the same thing, but just in different settings, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. There's like a lot of this stuff. Maybe it's just because I'm so disconnected from the common veal of people that I can understand more why like the movie versions of these are popular, because the movies are just functionally illiterate. Whereas I think this comes back to like what we were talking about last week in terms of how I can endure a movie no matter how bad it is, more often than not, but I can't endure bad writing. And I just don't know why other people can endure bad writing. Like I think it's partly because like the way it has to do with the medium itself, right? When you watch a movie or when you listen to music or any of these different artistic forms, you don't require technical skill to be able to actually understand at a basic level what's going on, right? Anyone can watch a movie and get what's going on, right? It doesn't matter how technical or advanced or literate or whatever it is. You can just basically understand what it is. But when it comes to reading and language, it's a technical skill that you have to know how to read, right? You don't know how to watch a movie, but you have to know how to read at a basic level, right? And I don't know how people actually endure writing that isn't good, right? If you have to like know how to do something, know how to do it well. Whereas like with movies, you don't know how to have to do it well, so I can accept that no one would know how to do it well, right? Whereas like with reading, it's something more. It's more of an achievement rather than something that's just given. I don't know.
Well, I guess because you're co-creating it and like with along with the writer and the language, but that co-creation relies on you kind of vibing with it, to use a technical term. So, and if you're not vibing with it, the sort of spirit of creation, of creating a world, if you will, isn't really there. And for you, that's obviously linked to the way that it's written. For me, it is too, to some extent. I appreciate the story as a historical artifact. Yeah. This isn't the kind of story that I would like willingly to read.
He says as the person who picked this for the podcast.
I actually picked this mostly because I wanted to talk about the movie, and this was the story, and we're doing a literature podcast, so yeah.
I mean, look, I don't think that there's anything wrong with. I enjoy this as a historical text, but I'm an avid enjoyer of fantasy, and so I got to enjoy it on more than that. As a fantasy enjoyer, like it very much strikes as like primordial. It's basic. And I do think people should read it. I think it's great. I really love reading it. But I mean, there's also the thing of I'm excited to read more Conan. To be honest with you, I'm excited to see where it goes, and which is a function. Also, like I was like yelling about before, a function of fantasy. So the first one doesn't have to be great or cohesive or answer all the questions or have.
Don't worry, I don't want any questions answered. Sorry.
Well, I used to read a lot of the Conan comics. I think because Conan's the IP has drifted around to different companies, particularly in the comics world. And I think the runs that I used to read were, I think it was when Dark Horse Comics had possession of it. And they were really good because what I really liked about them was they were good stories. Some of them were based on Howard's stories, but most of them were original stories. And Conan's the kind of character that you can just create a story with. And they were good. What I liked about them was they had a really cool, Frank Fenzetta sort of title pages, which I used to love as a kid. But then inside the comics and the panels, it was all black and white. So, and I just really like that style, and all really detailed as well.
I think I get it a lot more with comic books, and I understand why comic books are much more popular.
It works really well in comics.
Because comics are they're a visual medium. Like fundamentally, they're not really a written medium, and I think that translates much more into a sort of like pulp fiction-y, pop cultural type thing. Like I think the idea that maybe this really is the elitist in me coming out, but the idea that they can actually be a literary pop culture in a genuine sense seems to me to be not true. Almost like the proper the most authentic like literary pop cultures haven't actually been written pop cultures. They've been oral pop cultures, right? The way that popular ballads work, that kind of stuff. They're not necessarily written down, they're passed on through verbal recitation rather than, and that probably goes to Rio's point as well, about the verbality of it rather than the written quality of it. Whereas I think since probably the 30s, 20s going on to today, popular culture has been an image rather than a written phenomenon. And you get this sort of weird period between, say, I don't know, 1840s or whenever like literacy starts to get bigger, where there was a kind of like a semi-literary pop culture in terms of like the written word, anyway, because people could actually start to read books. But as soon as like film became a thing, that died completely, basically. But I don't know if that's ever been properly true because, as I said before, the way film works is that it can the audience that literature could actually reach was always going to be less than film could reach because film doesn't require you to be literate, right, or to have an education or anything like that. So it's a naturally popular form, whereas literature is a naturally elitist form because it requires education. And that's why I think literary popular culture works, almost because it goes against the very nature of the form almost. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually love that. I love what you're saying. And I almost completely agree, except for the fact that it is popular. You were asking before, like, why do people like this? And we couldn't really give you a good answer. And the only real answer is that for whatever reason, people do, and it is popular. And
I think my point is that I actually don't know how popular it was. I think those kind of like pop culture things that relied upon people reading were never actually as popular as people think they were, because the amounts of people who could actually read and would actually go towards reading anything, like even if it was like pulp trash or whatever it was, that actually didn't exist. We overinflate those numbers compared to what they were when people started like watching films and stuff like that.
Well, so, he published a lot. Howard published a lot in Weird Tales, which was a kind of speculative fiction pulp magazine, and that what I think you're right, actually, very much. It's not wasn't widely popular, but it was popular with aficionados and people who are really passionate about it, nerds essentially. So
God.
So like it kind of I guess it gained popular momentum via that, because by the passion of like the fans of things like that. That's how we've come to where we're at with popular culture at the moment. Well, like comic books used to, I really think people need to remember this, that comic books used to be fucking for nerds, like really, really marginal people. And now everyone loves, well, they don't love comic books. They love the kind of adaptations of them, I guess. But it's the same thing. It's the small subcultural audience that sort of propelled it forward and kept it, or pushed it into the zeitgeist, I guess, to the point where John Milius makes this Conan the Barbarian movie, which I personally think surpasses Howard's work.
You wanted to talk about the witch scene, didn't you? Where
yes, I don't think it's a early 80s, late 70s film if there isn't some kind of like psychedelic weirdness in there,
like some incomprehensible sex scene that comes out of nowhere, has no consequences really at all. The entire film.
The main thing is that he finds his friend. He finds Subutai there, I guess. That's the only thing that make it.
They're given the quest to go to Zamora.
Yeah.
She says, "Go to Zamora." Pussy. Also, they got to engage in some like dope Orientalism.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
Edward Said would have a field day with this film and its Orientalism. Edward Said.
Yeah.
He coined the term Orientalism. The story is kind of narrated by the Oriental wizard.
Marco, yay.
Marco.
Aku, Uncle Iroh, just an icon of voice acting.
Yeah.
Love him.
He's got a great voice. Yeah. And he's in the second one too. The second one's not as good because it's a little, the second one I would say is camp. That is camp, like full camp. And it's like they turned up the homoeroticism. Like you think getting shot at with like erect snakes is homoerotic? Like the whole quest, they're searching for a bejeweled horn that they have to stick in a statue to bring it to life.
Yay.
So yeah. Oh, and it's got Grace Jones in it, and she's amazing.
Oh God, I have to watch this movie. Jesus.
Have you not seen it?
I've never seen any of it. I've never engaged with any Conan in my life.
You need to watch this. You need to watch
this. Is my first experience of Conan. Grace
Jones plays a crazy, like wild warrior woman, and she's like, yeah, it's so good. She's got a stick that she stabs people with and stuff. Yeah.
I do have one last thing to say about the movie, actually. And now that we're talking about Marco, I was so happy when I saw his name and heard his voice as the opening narrator. I felt like we were talking very briefly about Arnold saying almost nothing during this film, and the kind of oral, what I feel, is the kind of oral tradition of the Conan stories, and not just Conan, but also like pulp fiction. The way that it is a narrated film, we don't know, even though like we follow Conan from childhood to adulthood, we don't get a lot about what he thinks and feels. We know he thinks and feels things, but he doesn't really talk a lot. And this is another cinematic parallel that I'm making. But it's narrated. We don't really need. We're told what he's doing, where he's going, and there's kind of this narration in the background. Not too dissimilar to Samurai Jack, which is another one of Marco's big roles, Aku. And Samurai Jack, you don't know, he doesn't say anything. It says almost nothing the entire series. And yeah, I thought that the movie seemed to get that on an inherent level, that like doesn't need to talk that much. We've got a narrator to fill in the blanks, and it works really well that way.
Yeah, that's something I noticed as well, and it's something I've become, and I wouldn't just say this is a genre or form thing, like not just in film, but I've noticed in more of my reading that I kind of prefer that. Like, I don't want to be told how someone feels. Like I prefer to be sort of not.
Matt, I'm afraid, in case you're not aware of it, it's called this technique called what's it called? Show don't tell.
Yes. I'm aware of it. Yes. As someone who has done a creative writing course, I am aware of the technique. But and I have complained about this before, like paring back things so much that it just becomes next to nothing. Not voicing his opinions and everything I kind of like it. And it's kind of one of the great things about this movie. And it's one of those times where a constraint on the production is used to really good effect, because he
can't talk.
He can't speak English.
It's a constraint because it works thematically, right?
Yeah.
And when constraint is used just for the sake of constraint, or when things aren't linked to whatever the broader themes are of the film or whatever the broader things are for the film or book or whatever, then it just doesn't work. Right? Where it works here because it just sort of a film about a character who just is barbaric and goes out and kills people and, you know, fucks women and everything like that, like fits a character that doesn't speak, right? Like, you don't, like, what are they going to say? Like, what, like, who the fuck, like, what, he doesn't have like some sort of like grand, like Hamletian sense of self or anything like that. Like, fuck, I don't want to hear him speak. The more he just like fucks up shit, the better, right?
Yeah.
And I think like that maybe could be like a problem with like modern action films where like the characters have to be considered serious or whatever such crap as that. They have to be overly verbose. You know, they've got to be funny, charismatic. You can't just have a character who just is sort of, even though the characters who are supposed to be like kind of like silent, like the Hulk is no longer like silent or anything like that.
Yeah.
They've got to be like, they've got to have their like love arc. They've got to have their, and it can't just be like, you know, a fucking arc. It's got to be a love arc. It's well,
that's the thing about this movie. The arc with Conan and Valeria is basically a fucking arc. They like meet one night, you know, doing dodgy things, and then they fuck each other, and then they don't know each other for very long.
It's pure like sort of masculine eroticism, right?
Yeah. It's
just sort of like, wow, I'm turned on to you because you helped me steal this ruby, like, and you beheaded a snake, like, you know, it's like the, you know, the image that the male person beheading the snake, you know, the phallic image of the father, and therefore I can now take you as my thing. It's this pure fantasy, you know. It works a lot better as that than it would otherwise, because at least it like channels its like demonic energy.
Yeah, and it's more sort of primordial and not like it is of like, much like Schwarzenegger in his early films, it's more of the body than like it's grounded in that, like
their body
physical
fantasies more than anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, which I find, if we look at Schwarzenegger's career as well, like those early films, obviously he doesn't speak much. Same with Terminator, another really great film from the 80s. But later, that's when the kind of irony comes in, right? Like, and he's sort of playing with his star image, and he's got the like witty one-liners and things like that. Like, he drops a guy off a cliff in Commando and is like, "I let him go," and it's like things like that. Like,
yeah, it's gone from being like intentional to being unintentional to being intentional.
Yeah. But even I think back then, when he wasn't saying much as Conan, like, he doesn't have to do much, he doesn't have to say much, but he still has a weird sort of charisma. And it just really works for the film. And like, we don't need to know what the hell's going on in his head. Probably not a lot, but yeah.
Thank God we don't know. But it does work. It's like, just like, he might not be a verbose actor, but he's a body actor, right? You know, and he can do different things with his like face that sort of that can accrue like emotion. And, you know, not everything needs to be said. Not everyone needs to be sort of self-reflexive or anything like
there's a school of thought that says there's two types of actors. There's one kind of actor who embodies a character, and another who personifies a character. I feel like he's more in the embodies a character sort of thing.
I just believe he is actually Conan the Barbarian. And that was how, you know, he managed to rule California with an iron fist, and we need him back.
Stanislavski, the hard out. You should all read The Phoenix on the Sword.
If you want an aneurysm, like, don't do it.
And
no, you should definitely read it.
And watch Conan the Barbarian 1982.
And watch definitely.
Yeah,
you should all definitely watch.
It's on YouTube for free in HD.
And it's in good quality.
Very good quality. Definitely watch the film. Do not read the story. Don't let Rio
read the
convince
story. You. Don't listen to Ruben. He's hot, but he's stupid.
Exactly. Just like this story, right?
Another day, walking in circles, haunted by memories. I push on this wheel. I pray to Klam, grant me revenge, and help me to answer the riddle of steel. A shy little boy, I couldn't protect them. Helpless and timid, as weak as a girl. They butchered my people, the dogs ate my father. My mother beheaded, they took my whole world. Crom, where is the wizard who killed my mother? Still, I can recall his terrible gaze. Crom, where are the two snakes facing each other? Crom, if you're my god, then show me the way. I'm on the path, chopping up bodies, hacking and slicing, and look at me now. With loyal friends joining my party, each step I take, I'm fulfilling my vow. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women. Hear the lamentation of the women. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women. Hear the lamentation of the women. Crom, show me the wizard who killed my mother. True, I've never prayed to you before. Still, what would I give if you could help me see this through? And if you do not listen, then the hell with you. Crom, where are the two snakes racing each other? Crom, if you're my god, then show me the way. I swear this wizard will fall, 'cause this has begun, they murdered them all. I'm the last one, I issued the call, revenge for my mom, I pray to you, God. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women.